Tim Bontemps, ESPN NBA writer, asked 20 coaches, executives, and scouts from across the NBA about what happened and what lies ahead after what happened in this crazy offseason. The topics range from who's the best player in the league to which team will win next season's championship. And Tim joins us now. Tim, good to have you back. What was the most surprising answer you got with this entire survey?
That's a good question, Dan. I hadn't really thought about that. I guess to me, the thing that surprised me the most was the number of people who said Kawhi was the best player in the league. Not that I was surprised he got the most votes, but when I kind of came up with this idea a few weeks ago, I didn't really expect Kawhi to get that much of a percentage of the vote, or really anybody to get that much, based off how tight the MVP race was all year, and the fact that, you know, there has been a lot of discussion about who the best player in the league was, but the way he played in the playoffs, you know, I think that kind of just overwhelmed people into choosing him as, you know, I think deservedly the guy that right now has the title of best player in the league.
Why didn't anybody have the Lakers winning the championship this year?
I think because that's probably the right way to go in terms of forecasting things. I think the Lakers have, obviously with LeBron and AD, that's, you know, as good of a 1-2 punch as you can find in the league. But even though their summer, you know, bouncing back after not getting Kawhi was, you know, probably went better than expected, given how long it took for him to make his decision and how many guys decided quickly. I think they do have a lot of flaws on their roster. And even with those guys at the top end, I think when they get in the playoff series against, say, the other team in LA or, you know, some of the other top teams in the West, I think those flaws are going to be very difficult for them to overcome in the Western Conference playoffs.
What flaws are you talking about?
They don't really have very many players who can guard anyone. You look at their roster, they really only have, I would say, two guys in AD and Danny Green that are above average defensive players at this point. LeBron obviously can be, but, you know, for the most part, he is not giving the same kind of effort that he used to at the other end of the court. And they just have, you know, because of the nature of their roster, they've got a bunch of guys that are on, you know, minimum contracts or small contracts, and that just leads to guys not being that good. I don't think Rajon Rondo at this point is that good. I don't think JaVale McGee at this point is that good. We'll see if DeMarcus Cousins can take another step forward from where he was last year, but coming off the Achilles injury, that is a question mark. You know, really other than Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma, who's kind of a really nice offensive player but has questions defensively, you know, they've got a lot of guys who come into the season with questions. So, I mean, look, again, LeBron and AD is a great place to start, but to say that they have, you know, they're a favorite to even get out of the West, I think with the amount of strong competition around them, Utah, Denver, Houston, you know, obviously the Clippers, I think the combination of their flaws and the strengths of the other teams, I can understand why people would choose to pick somebody else to win the West.
And in this survey of coaches, executives, and scouts from around the NBA, nobody had LeBron as the MVP. That surprise you?
No, I wouldn't say so. Just because, again, you know, LeBron is going to be 35. He's coming off the first significant injury of his career. He played, I think, the least games he's ever played in a season. I'm sure the least games he's ever played in a season in his career, right? So if you're trying to project forward for next season and you're asked to pick who's the best player in the league, I think it's reasonable to not pick him, right? And even, it's funny, even though the Lakers got no votes for winning the West or winning the title, and even though LeBron didn't get any votes for being the best player in the league, LeBron came up several times, probably at least 5 or 6 people, if not more, said, you know, LeBron's in the mix, but, you know, they decided to go another direction. And a lot of people said, well, the Lakers are going to be good, but they decided to pick the Clippers or somebody else. So it's not like the Lakers got, you know, no respect or no thought from people. It's just that when you're making a binary choice, you know, when you look around the league, you know, LeBron's in kind of a similar situation to where the Lakers are as a team, in that it's not that people don't think he's any good at this point or that he isn't really good. But if you're choosing between him and one of these other couple guys, or between the Lakers and one of these other couple teams, people tended to go the other way.
Tim Bontemps covers the NBA for ESPN, joining us on the program. What do you think the game plan will be for Russell Westbrook and James Harden with the Rockets?
Find another basketball, maybe. That might help. I am genuinely fascinated to see what that team looks like. There was a lot of talk 2 years ago about whether Chris Paul and James Harden could play together. That experiment on the court, I think, probably went about as well as it possibly could have, and frankly went better than I thought it was going to at first. But Russell Westbrook presents a lot of different challenges in that. He also brings some different strengths. He's incredibly athletic. He can fly up and on the court. You'd think that Houston will be more of a transition team when he has the ball in his hands than they were before. But when you look at Mike D'Antoni's system and guys who need to be able to shoot, right? Russell Westbrook is not exactly a prototypical fit in that. The Rockets would say, hey, if he's going to shoot 32, 33% on open threes, that's fine. He could just jack those up and we'll take, 50% effective field goal percentage from him on those shots. But, I don't know how that's going to go. Both he and James Harden are not good off the ball. I'm curious to see how that goes. They're both going to have to work harder in those aspects. They're both going to have to find ways to impact the game more than they have when they don't have the ball in their hands. It's going to be a really, really interesting experiment, and one that it sounds like both those guys have, went to the Rockets and said, hey, we'll make this work. So, at this point, to me, the thing that makes it really interesting is after they say that, it's on them to actually make it work, and I will see if they can.
But here's my philosophy with the Rockets. Why not just have Harden start, go 7-8 hard minutes, and then I bring in Westbrook, and so I just have him going against that second unit. I do load management with both of these guys. I know they love their numbers, but I would just be coming at you in waves if I were the Rockets. What do you think?
I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think to your point about them, I don't think that they're going to play like 24 minutes each. But I think if you look at the way the Rockets handled James Harden and Chris Paul, to your point, one of them was on the court for 48 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what's going to happen with these guys. And, it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of run things in a similar way to what Brett Brown does in Philadelphia, right? Where he will take out somebody 4 or 5 minutes into the game. Like Joel Embiid will come out at like the 8-minute mark of the first quarter and come back in at the 4-minute mark, right? And maybe it won't be quite that pronounced, but I would be very surprised if we don't see some pretty heavy staggering with those guys and, to try to maximize their time on the ball. Because, to your point, the one thing looking at Westbrook that could be a benefit to him going to Houston is he's never had a lot of shooting around him in Oklahoma City. And if you put him on that Rockets team with James Harden off the court and a bunch of shooters around him, and he can just attack the rim, then that could end up being a really nice situation for them in those minutes that James isn't on the court.
I'll leave you with this, Tim. Steve Kerr was critical of Anthony Davis, how he handled this, should have handled it quietly. Players should honor their contracts, which I understand. But you had Draymond Green flirting with Kevin Durant before Durant was a Golden State Warrior when he was under contract. And you had Paul George a year into signing a contract extension on Paul George Day in Oklahoma City, telling Oklahoma City that he wanted out. I have a bigger problem with Paul George than I do Anthony Davis. At least Anthony Davis, there was some transparency there. So what do you think of what Steve Kerr had to say?
That is a really complicated topic that I could probably talk about for an hour. I think what Steve would say, I think to your point, is that Paul George did it quietly, and therefore the Thunder were able to get a massive return for him.
Yeah, well, he did it quietly because it was 24 hours where he had to make this happen.
Well, it was a little bit more than that, I think. But listen, I think to your point, I agree with you in the sense that it's rather rich for the Warriors to be criticizing anyone for how team building happens, right? In the league. And I think in general, we're just kind of past the point of no return with the players. Like I've kind of analogized this to the players who've kind of taken the red pill from the Matrix and they've realized kind of what the system is, and that they have the power to exploit it in every way, and that the top 5 to 10 guys really control the league in every aspect. But I mean, listen, was the Anthony Davis thing great for the league last spring? No, it wasn't great, in the sense that you don't want to have one of your 5 or 6 best players in the league not playing for basically the second half of the season. But if you spin things forward, if you look where the league is now, you've got stars all over the place. You got 2 stars on a bunch of teams. The league is in great shape. And you can go back all the way to 1975 if you want, when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went to the Bucks and said, I want to play for the Knicks or the Lakers, trade me there.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something that's happened for the whole history of the league. So I don't know which situation is better, Paul George or Anthony Davis, or like which one is a better or worse situation for the team involved. But at the end of the day, this is just the reality of life in the NBA. And, whether it's Steve or anybody else, I think we just have to get used to the way this is going, because I don't think it's changed anytime soon.
Tim, good to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Tim Bontemps. He covers the NBA for ESPN.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.